Up next, we have Senate Majority Leader Stephen Horsford. If anybody went to the legislature during this past, 4 months, mining doesn't pay a lot of taxes, so they spend a lot of money on lobbyists. So up in Carson City, it's kind of like Jurassic Park. Lobbyists are coming out of elevators, they're falling out of the trees, and Senator Horsford has to deal with the brunt of that. So he's going to talk about the legislature, mining, and the tax issues that we just dealt with this last session.
Good evening. Thank you, Laura. Good evening. How's everyone?
Good.
Well, I appreciate the invitation to be here. This is an issue, the taxing of our industries that hit front and center for me as a state legislator. I want to recognize my colleague, Senator Sheila Leslie, who's in Reno, and I know is listening in. She served as the chairperson of the Revenue Committee, who helped to make sure that we had fair and comprehensive hearings. And in part is the reason that we were able to expose in public some of the corporate loopholes that are taken not just by mining, but banks and other industries in this state. I want to recognize Assemblywoman Peggy Pierce, because she's always pushing me to do more and to stand up and to be accountable and to make sure the information that we learn is part of the debate. And I really appreciate her for that, because sometimes she's a single voice or a limited voice in the process, but you know what? She's oftentimes right on the money. And I want to recognize her. I see Senator Mark Menendez here, and it's good to see him. Thank you for being here. And my colleague in the state Senate. I'm going to talk about just quickly, and as quickly as I can, Guy, because after I started peeling back the onion, it made me want to cry, but it also really stunk up the place in the legislature. Let me say, from the outset, that my job as a state senator is to represent the constituents and to do my job on the behalf of the people of the state of Nevada. And when we went into the last legislative session, we were faced with the biggest budget shortfall as a percentage of our overall budget than any other state in the country. We had a $2.5 billion deficit, and that was 30% of our revenues from 2 years prior. And when you understand that our state budget funds 50% education, 30% health and human services, 10% public safety, and the rest goes to governmental agencies, then you begin to understand why those cuts hurt. And when I was faced as the chairman of the Finance Committee with having to make very, very, very difficult decisions that I did not enjoy or like, and that hit me to the core of who I am, I felt an obligation, as information came to us, to close the loopholes, the lax regulatory oversight, and the lack of accountability that we've had in some of our major industries in this state. And I don't apologize for that. I did my job as a state senator, and I took my oath as a state senator seriously. And for those who like it, great. For those who don't, during a hearing on March 10th before the Senate Revenue Committee, we learned that there had not been audits conducted on the mining industry in the state of Nevada for at least 2 years. Now, that's not the mining industry's fault. That was the state government not doing its job to ensure that we had proper regulatory oversight of one of our major industries in this state. Now, as it was uncovered that they weren't being audited, it then exposed a number of other information to us. First, that despite the price of gold and the gross proceeds of mines rising rapidly, there was actually a decline in net proceeds that serve as the basis for taxation of that industry. Now, to me, it can only be attributed to a rise in deductions that were claimed to lower the net proceeds and resulted in lower taxes that were paid by that industry. Second, there were large discrepancies between major mining companies in the percentage of the overall deductions that they took from the gross proceeds claimed to calculate the net proceeds. One mining company in the state of Nevada took a 72% deduction on the 3% of the gross proceeds that they pay, the net proceeds that they pay to the state of Nevada, compared to another mining company that took 46% deductions. Now, these discrepancies caused me to examine both the state law that authorizes the deductions and the regulations that support it. And my staff did hours of research on the public record for the legislature, previous legislatures, the Nevada Tax Commission, and other public bodies in order to uncover this information. And what we found was another apparent discrepancy, this one between the law and the regulations, where there was ambiguity between the regulation and the law, which in fact contributed to the widening gap between gross and net proceeds and the differences between large mining companies in their deduction claims. And so, because of that, and I want to just highlight a couple of these discrepancies. State law, in line with state law, deductions for salaries should be limited to those actually involved in mining production and not for salaries of employees working at corporate offices outside of Nevada. Deductions for corporate services such as marketing unrelated to actual mining operations should not have been authorized according to state law. Deductions should be taken only for employer-paid contributions for industrial insurance premiums, health insurance for employees, unemployment insurance, and Social Security benefits, in line with the specific language in state law. The regulation also should be clarified to ensure that deductions only for employee housing that is reasonably proximate to a mine and the distance from established communities is far enough to justify such a deduction. The regulation should also clarify that when reclamation costs can be deducted based on their relationship to actual mining operations, the commission, the tax commission, may have to get clarification from the legislature around this authority. So given the disparity of deductions between just these two large gold companies, I called on and filed a petition, not as a state senator, but as a private citizen, before the Nevada Tax Commission, and I asked them to look at the fact that the mining companies were taking deductions that exceeded what was authorized by state law. And where there was ambiguity, because the Tax Commission had authorized them to do so, that the Tax Commission should close those loopholes and clarify for the record that they are not allowed. Now, my petition was accepted by the Nevada Tax Commission, but their solution was to tell the legislature to clarify the statute again, saying which deductions should be allowed and which ones should not. And they issued that order in late May, I believe it was, weeks before we adjourned. Well, fortunately, Senator Sheila Leslie and some of my other colleagues were already working on legislation to close some of these corporate loopholes and to provide for more clarity in what was allowed in these deductions and which ones were not. SB 493 was introduced. It was initially introduced with the provisions to close these loopholes on these deductions in order for the full amount that mining should be paying from their net proceeds of minerals taxes, and to take away the ambiguity of the deductions that they were taking out of their payments. In addition, we ended up proposing an amendment to that bill before it was brought out of the Senate, which created for the first time the Nevada Mining Oversight and Accountability Commission. And that process requires that we create another oversight commission, because unfortunately the tax commission wasn't doing its job. We know that there have been problems within EPA and the Bureau of Land Management, and that each one has its own areas of responsibility as far as regulating and providing proper oversight to the mining industry. And we believed, based on input from the community, that there needed to be a central commission that was charged with reviewing all the regulations that impacted the mining industry and the mining industry's impact on communities. And so we proposed an amendment to SB 493 that required this commission to be adopted, and that appointments be made to that commission. That bill passed on, of course, a party line vote initially. It required a 2/3 vote later, because it did create revenue, because we closed these corporate loopholes, which created more revenue to our budget than what the mining industry was obligated to pay. And so that actually created a 2/3 requirement. And against the objections of people who support this industry, and who said that no way, no how, not on their watch would a revenue bill come out of the state Senate, we passed this bill in a bipartisan way out of the Senate. It moved to the Assembly and was adopted and went to the governor, and was actually one of the few bills that I had anything to do with that the governor actually didn't veto. Now, after that, as the Senate Majority Leader, the bill specified that we had the authority to recommend certain appointments to the commission. And I had felt that after having very fair and open and transparent hearings in the Revenue Committee that Senator Leslie chaired and ensured, that we were being played a little bit. And that every time we asked for some information, it came back and it wasn't very clear. And when I'd ask a question, or other members would ask a question, no one from the industries would ever really be able to give us a straight answer. And so, as I'm able to make 2 appointments to the Nevada Mining Oversight and Accountability Commission. And so when I was deliberating who I should appoint, after all the research and all the hours and all the time that my staff and I put into reviewing these voids in our regulatory oversight, I decided I wanted to be on the commission. So I recommended myself and Kyle Davis for the Nevada Conservation League, and I just got in the letter the other day, a letter from the governor appointing me as a member to the Mining Oversight and Accountability Commission. And I have my official paperwork here that says that I am duly appointed to that commission. And like others have said, I'm not against the mining industry. I'm not against business. I am for fairness, I'm for accountability, and I'm for proper oversight of our industries. One of the reasons that we have the problems that we have in this country right now is because of lax financial oversight of the banking industry, and lax oversight of the housing financial services that put so many people in predatory loans that now have created the housing crisis that we're in and that the financial industry has put us in as well. Well, as we're learning here tonight, and information is power, we need to have oversight and accountability of all of our major industries. And I thought that if we had a Nevada Gaming Commission, why shouldn't we have a Nevada Mining Oversight and Accountability Commission that allows the public to go one place and to review all the regulations, review all the oversight that's required of that industry, and if there's a concern, if there's an issue, which we've heard time and time again that there are, that you as a citizen shouldn't have to jump through hoops in your own government to get your voice heard. You should be able to go and be informed, and that's what this process will create. Now, this is not the end-all be-all, and there will need to be other measures considered in the future. But this, I think, is a major step forward and shows the commitment on behalf of the 2011 legislature to begin the process of having greater accountability, greater oversight, to close the corporate loopholes, and to provide for the regulatory structures that we need to hold all of our industries accountable. And the mining industry is one that we needed to start with based on their own information that they were taking deductions that were not provided for in law. So that's why I'm here. This is something that I'm passionate about because it's the money that we need to fund our kids' schools. It's the money that we need to fund the nursing home programs that we were asked to cut funding for. It's the money that we need so that we have the public safety and the correctional officers to keep us safe. And when we don't have corporations paying their fair share or taking advantage of corporate loopholes, then I believe it's incumbent upon us as elected officials to address that, and I feel we did our job. So thank you very much for having me here.